What is up, guys? This is a very weird video that I'm doing today. I'm reacting to an expert, I believe. I'm sure he is. I've never seen any of his videos covering NFL before or draft, let alone the Chicago Bears and the Justin Fields. I'm gonna guess he's gonna be a stick up for Justin Fields. That's what most of these casuals are saying. They should keep him. How long is his leash? Tell me. How much time are you going to give him?
I really don't see what is so special about Caleb Williams. I really don't. Many might say, oh man, you're crazy. But let's talk about it. In Caleb Williams' college career,
if we're judging him by his stats, we know that his stats from his sophomore season, the year in which he won the Heisman, was better than this past year. USC was a better team. They won more games, and Caleb Williams had better stats. There's no denying that.
Almost 2,000 passing yards, which is great. It's great. 2022, even better. He had a completion percentage of 66%, 4,500 yards.
Enough yapping. We get Caleb Williams has great stats.
Again, not bad. But 2023, he digressed, and he had 30 touchdowns.
Are we for real using the term digressed to describe a quarterback who hasn't even stepped foot in the NFL yet? Are we saying he got worse? He did not get worse. So what if his stats took a hit? That's ridiculous. That's stupid that we're talking like that. Are we saying Justin Herbert regressed because his stats aren't as good as when he was a rookie? Are we saying Joe Burrow regressed because he was worse this year, being half healthy than he was in the years past when they went to the Super Bowl? No, they're getting better. It's stupid to put the word regress on these young players who are improving. That's not what regression is. The situations around you, the conditions that you're in are going to change. That has a greater effect than if you've actually gotten better or worse.
He digressed, but the problem that I have is this. This year, the teams that they played to start off, they played SJSU, San Jose State, crushed them. Unranked team. They beat Nevada badly. They beat Stanford. Stanford is okay, but they're nothing special.
Judging teams by their non-conference schedule is such a casual take. I mean, look at those people who judge Michigan for having no competition for almost the entire year. They won the national championship. They're the best team in college football. And if we're going to do the same for judging players, saying they don't face any tough competition, whose fault do you think that is? Do you think it's the school's fault? Are we going to schedule against Power 5 schools who are halfway across the country just because? No, we're going to give the opportunity to these smaller schools. We're going to give them that big stage. We're going to take that. We're going to pay these schools tons of money so that way we can boost our record. We have to think about it in the long run. We're not looking at, okay, let's get good competitions so these players can settle the debates so they can show off their skills and against good teams so that way the casuals will have better opinions. No, schools don't think about that. Why would they? They're thinking about the team as an overall program. These players play for the team. It's not the teams doing whatever for their players. In a good program, maybe. And maybe sometimes, we do see those big money matchups like Florida State versus LSU. But these teams aren't going to go ahead and go, oh, okay, we have a good quarterback, so let's schedule against some of the toughest competition, the toughest defenses in the world. No, that's even in the West. There's not a lot of schools with good defenses. We can't even look at Boise State. They don't even have a good defense anymore. We can look at Fresno State, even with their new head coach, and that's about it. And saying Stanford is okay is such a casual take because if you're looking at their conference record, it's atrocious. They won 5 games maybe overall. That doesn't sound bad, but when you're looking at their conference, how weak it is compared to even the better group of 5 conferences, Stanford is not in the top 50 when it comes to schools. They're just not. And that tells me this guy doesn't know much about college football. That's not a problem because you don't need to know a lot about college football to understand how great Caleb Williams is.
Arizona, I'm pretty sure they were ranked at the time when USC beat them.
It literally shows right in front of you. Arizona was not ranked at the time. They were probably undefeated, or I think they had 1 loss at the time maybe. The ranks that it shows are the ranks when they played them, not the final rankings. Otherwise, Arizona will be ranked, obviously. I stayed up to watch this game because I like to see Caleb Williams play live. He's one of the most entertaining players there is, and this game was crazy. Arizona had a freshman quarterback, and they should have by no means remained in that game. And there was some turnovers, but it was not because of Caleb Williams playing awful. It was sloppy play from both sides, really. It was just a high-scoring game somehow because of the 3 overtimes. But don't put this on Caleb Williams whatsoever. His team is sold.
They had to go to overtime, the third overtime, to be specific, to beat Arizona. And now the problems begin. You went out there to Notre Dame, a ranked team, and you lost by 28.
May or may not have had money on this game, but yeah, that was surprising for Caleb Williams to throw in 3 interceptions in the first half.
How is this guy supposed to be a quote-unquote generational prospect when you're a glorified Kyler Murray, in my opinion? You're barely sliding by these teams that aren't ranked, is my problem, and you're supposedly generational? You go to Washington next week, you take a loss. Michael Penix, he's the guy.
Okay, that game, we can differentiate between USC and Washington here. Who has better receivers? USC has probably they easily have a top 5 receiving class besides Texas, Georgia, but guess who's ahead? Washington. Michael Penix has Jalen Polk, he had Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan. Those are 3 great receivers. Now we look at USC, they have good receivers as well. They have Zachariah Branch, who was a freshman. They have Brandon Rice, who was really good and I think is underrated. They have Taj Washington, who had over 100 yards that game. But the experience that Washington has over the experience that USC had is significantly different. They have better players on offense. They have a better offensive line. If you look at the sacks category, Caleb Williams is a great improviser. He is fast. He knows how to use his legs. But as you see, he was sacked more than almost any other quarterback. I think the only quarterback who got sacked more was Shadir Sanders. And it's not to say that Caleb Williams is a bad scrambler. It's not to say that he can't avoid getting sacks, which he's in college. That doesn't, look at Will Levis. He was on the Titans now, but he had this bad issue with getting sacked a lot at Kentucky last year. Are we going to blame that on Caleb Williams? No. Just like, are we going to blame the loss on Caleb Williams losing to Washington? No, it's just stupid. Washington has a better offensive line. They have Troy Fautanu. Every team scored multiple touchdowns on USC pretty much besides Stanford. And every other team was able to compete with USC because of that. Not because Caleb Williams was underperforming. With the exception of Notre Dame. That was his worst game, of course. But I think we can give everyone room to have a bad game in a year. That was his only game under 200 passing yards. It's not like he had many flops, because we can even look at CJ Stroud and point out some of his bad games in college, such as the one against Northwestern. We can point to those other players who had bad games and say that's because of bad weather. But when it comes to Caleb Williams, just because the conditions are better doesn't mean he can't have a bad game one time in a year. Are we going to really get onto him like that? Why are we treating him like he's a star? Because he is. And of course, he's going to be criticized more because he's so good. But he's not perfect. When are we going to realize that other quarterbacks have struggles too? Michael Penix Jr., I know you're going to say he's better than Caleb Williams. That fool spent 6 years in college. Why would you even... He's not even going to be he shouldn't be a first runner. Even if he is, he would have to sit a year likely. I think he's better than Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who was a rookie this year, but I don't think he's that much different. And we look at Thompson-Robinson, he showed off in preseason. Michael Penix is probably going to be one of those good players. We're good for the preseason, but he's not going to be a regular season starter. He's not going to be a top 20 quarterback in his rookie year. He doesn't have that potential like Caleb Williams does. He can't make plays outside the pocket like Caleb Williams. Michael Penix Jr. is scared to get hit because of all those leg injuries that he had. And Caleb Williams, he's been healthy for 3 years now, from his year at Oklahoma to his 2 years at USC with Lincoln Riley. So I'm just going to hear what Jeremiah has to say.
Which is nothing to be ashamed of, but if you are this generational quarterback that everyone says that you are, why are you not performing in these games?
Again, it's not that he's not performing. The rest of the team was that bad. And Caleb Williams in the NFL is going to have not only better structure around him. It's gonna be more competitive with whatever team drafts him compared to other teams, but he's gonna have better receivers as well. Again, I'm not saying the USC receivers were bad, but they're noticeably worse than literally any team in the NFL right now. If you can get him a good group, I believe Caleb Williams will not have to be such of an improviser as he was in college. You can tell he has that ability from those early games in the year when they did start 6-0, when he was leading them to these wins, having clutch performances. You can see just how good Caleb Williams can be as a passer, how accurate he is. You can see that he has an arm, but just because the situation he was in was bad, he didn't get to show off these attributes as Michael Penix was able to. And are we going to judge Caleb Williams for that? Put Michael Penix Jr. against a good defense. Put him against Michigan. You saw in the national championship, he was missing receivers left and right. He didn't have a good showing in that game. So are we going to criticize Michael Penix Jr.? No. But are we going to criticize Caleb Williams? Yes, because he does have that star characteristic about him that other quarterbacks simply lack.
When you're playing these good teams, you seem to fall apart. And that's where I have my issue.
When do we draft NFL players based on their team's performance in college? We've had plenty of quarterbacks who went to bad schools in college. We can look at Bailey Zappi. We can look at Brock Purdy even, with Iowa State not being that successful. We can go back to 2016. Who was the first overall pick in that draft? Jared Goff. How was his team in college? 7-5. But he was still a good quarterback. He's a top 10 quarterback right now. He's been to the Super Bowl before. Caleb Williams is also going to be a number 1 overall pick. And we know the Pac-12 is a weak conference, but it was also a very competitive conference this season. And those two things are different because compared to other conferences, the SEC, much less talent. The Big Ten, much less talent. But among those teams were very competitive because it was a wide open conference. Every team had a shot at making a New Year's Six Bowl. And Washington, we saw him make the playoffs even. It's ridiculous because look at Justin Fields. His team's trash. The Bears have been doo-doo for 2 years now. And literally in the beginning of the video, you said they should keep him, that there's no need to move on. So why don't you treat Justin Fields the same way you're treating Caleb Williams? Exactly.
I don't see the comparisons to Mahomes. I don't see it.
If you can't see comparisons to Mahomes in the play of Caleb Williams, you need to get your eyes checked. I'm not just talking about the highlight plays. You can go back to week 0 and see the touchdown pass that Caleb Williams had when he was falling and he threw it, throwing a bomb down the sideline. You can go to any of these games and you will see those kinds of plays. You can look at the overtimes against Arizona where he ran it in on the outside, diving in for a touchdown. You've seen plenty of highlight plays similar to Mahomes has in the NFL. Caleb Williams is always looking downfield, and when he needs to, he can run. But that's not all the time. For the most part, Caleb Williams is focused on getting that big play. We don't see that with any other quarterback. We see that with Mahomes in the NFL, but look at any quarterback in this draft. That's why Caleb Williams should be the number 1 overall pick. He will help the Bears with that. Do we see that with Justin Fields? No, exactly. We see him try, but he doesn't have that ability to be a good passer after a few seconds. He gets sacked a lot. And of course, a lot of that can be credited to the awfulness that is the Bears' offensive line. But we do need to hold Justin Fields accountable for some of those plays where he can get the ball off sooner. We've seen those plays where Justin Fields doesn't even try to make a pass when the receivers are wide open in front of him. But again, this is just the YouTube creator not watching games and being biased. Because what else is he going to do?